Welcome to the Online Success Journey podcast, your opportunity to discover and learn from entrepreneurs like yourself. This is not your typical podcast, but a place where you can get the real story and find out how real people encounter speed bumps and detours, but journey through to find success. Now here's your host for the Online Success Journey podcast, Patience.
Hello everyone, welcome to Online Success Journey. This is episode 210. Are you ready to join the clan? Today we have Steve Gordon, a two-time entrepreneur and a best-selling author of Unstoppable Referrals. 10x referrals, half of the effort, and the exponential net strategy. He's the host of Unstoppable CEO podcast and has published over 400 articles on marketing and sales for professional service firms. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Patience. How are you?
I'm okay. I know the clan is anxious to hear your story, so let's get started with the basic. Can you tell my clan a little bit about your background, about how you started your own online business?
Absolutely. I started in, if we go way back to the beginning, before there was anything such as online business, back in the mid-'90s, actually before I'd ever been on the internet, I went to work as the 10th employee of a small engineering consulting firm here in the U.S. and was really, really fortunate to be asked to take over that firm after I'd been there for about 4 years, and grew that business, and ultimately decided I just had a passion for sales and marketing, and wanted to really focus my time on that. And so in 2010, I started our current firm, and most of the promotion, most of the marketing and the growth that we've had has been through online marketing. And so, we've gone from zero to building up a successful agency using online marketing. And hopefully we'll be able to talk about some of that today, and folks can learn some of those lessons.
Wow, what a background, Steve. What is the most dangerous belief an online entrepreneur can have?
Gosh, there are a lot of dangerous beliefs that a business owner can have, but I think, I think the thing that you've got to watch for is not being focused. And, you hear that a lot in terms of productivity, but I think the more important place as you're building your business where you've got to be focused is that you've got to be focused on who you're trying to serve. And it can be very dangerous if you don't do that. And the reason that it can be dangerous is that you have constraints in your business. You have a limited amount of time, and you have a limited number of dollars or pounds or euros that you can spend to grow your business. And if you're not focused on who you're trying to serve, then you're not going to be able to deploy those resources very effectively, and you're not going to get much of a result from that. And so we see this mistake made again and again and again with businesses where they're trying to serve and market to anyone and everyone. Their idea of their ideal client, the way they might describe that, would be anyone with a heartbeat and a wallet. And I think, when you start with that kind of a broad definition, it's very, very difficult to be successful in any business. And so it can be a really dangerous place to be. And we find that the most successful businesses are those that get very focused on who they want to serve and draw that circle around that group of people as small and as tight as they possibly can. And that way, that allows you to go deep with that smaller market. You can really communicate with them. You can be a leader to them. But when you're going broad, it's very hard to do that.
Why do you do what you do?
Well, very simply, we've decided that we want to be a hero to a certain group of people. The folks that we really want to show up for are professional service firm owners. And it's a very difficult business because they are at the same time both the product, they're selling their own services and their own work. They are the business owner. They're the sales force. Sometimes they're the accounting department and the janitorial service too. So it's a very difficult business to operate. It's unlike a product business in that, with a product business, you have the people who develop the product, you have the ownership of the company, you have a sales force that is interacting with the market usually to sell the product. In a professional firm, you've got to go out and sell and then kind of run into your Superman phone booth and change into your Superman suit and put the cape on and come back out and now save the day for that client. And it's really difficult to do that. And so what tends to happen in these firms is that they don't do a good job selling. You have somebody who was trained in a particular profession. They're passionate about doing that kind of work. And they spend most of their time focused there, not nearly enough time on business development. And as a result, they live in this sort of up and down, we call it the revenue roller coaster. So they'll go out at the beginning of the business when they don't have a lot of client work, and they'll spend all of their time trying to market and sell, and they build up a little bit of clientele, and then they stop marketing and selling to serve those clients, and then revenue trends back down again. And so they get in this really vicious up and down cycle. And so that's why we do what we do. We just love working with those people. They're all good people, hardworking people, smart people, and they need help that we can give them.
Let's put man aside. How do you know you are successful?
Wow, there's a lot of ways to answer that. In business, obviously money is one way. It's a scorecard in a sense. But I tend to look at the impact we're having. If we're working with business owners and we're moving the needle for them, in other words, we're creating more freedom for them. We're creating freedom in both terms of financial freedom, but also creating time freedom for them, so that they're not having to work 80 hours a week, and we're creating for them the ability to work with the people that they want to work with, so they have relationship freedom. If we're doing those things, then I think we're successful with our clients. And for me personally, I look at those three things. So to the extent that I'm increasing my own time freedom, my own relationship freedom, so I can work with and associate with the people that I choose to, that I want to, and while doing that, we're serving people and creating financial freedom in the process, then I think that's a pretty good measure of success.
Can anyone be an entrepreneur, or are some people more cut out for it than others?
Well, I think anyone can do it. I think the question is, are you prepared for what lies ahead? And I joke a lot on our podcast as I'm interviewing entrepreneurs, because one of the questions I ask them is, what is it that makes you unstoppable? How have you gone past, the hurdles in your career? And I said, I'm still looking for the person that tells me, well, there weren't any hurdles. It was all smooth sailing and it was very, very easy. And that never seems to be the case with entrepreneurs. And our kind of running joke on the podcast is that being an entrepreneur is something that normal people wouldn't do. Normal people look at what we do in taking the risk to start a business, and they go, "No way, I will never do that. That's crazy. You mean I'm going to give up my nice, secure job and my paycheck, and I'm going to go out there?
No payment."
Right. Yeah. And I might not get paid for some extended period of time, and I could completely fail. In fact, it's likely, the statistics show that more often than not, people who do that fail. No, I'm not going to do that. But so can anybody do it? Yes. But you have to be prepared for the risk that you're about to take. And I believe entrepreneurship is one of the best personal development exercises that you could ever go through, because you learn from yourself, and you learn a lot about yourself, about what you're willing to endure, and how honest you're willing to be with yourself about your own performance and the value that you're creating in the world. Because at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, we're all measured by the amount of value that we create. If we create value in the world, and that is created in the eyes of our customers, our clients, not in our own eyes. It doesn't matter if we think it's valuable. It's only valuable if they think it's valuable. And to the extent that we create value in the world, we're successful. And sometimes that takes a few iterations of a business. I mean, I've got friends who have started and failed in business, and started again and failed again and started, and they learn each time, but the lessons can be really, really painful. And I think you've got to be ready for that and able to persevere through that until you get to the point that you are successful.
What have you learned from business as a whole?
Well, I mean, piggybacking on the last question, I've learned a great deal about myself. I've learned to confront my fears and to lean into them and really embrace them as part of the growing process. And I've learned how to deal with failure and how to both be responsible for something that didn't work and hopeful towards the future, towards the next endeavor. And so to me, like I said, I think it's the greatest personal development process you could ever put yourself through. But you've got to be prepared for going through that.
In your businesses, do you ever have a coach or a mentor yourself?
Absolutely. I'm trying to think. The first year I invested in having a coach, I think it was 2004 or 5. May have even been a little bit earlier than that. And I've always found that when I've made those investments, that it's almost immediately led to dramatic business growth. And so I to this day, I have I have a coach. I actually now have coaches in multiple areas of my life, and am looking for more. And so I have a business coach, I have a fitness coach, I have a health coach, and I'm always looking for people who have expertise in an area where I don't have expertise, who can guide me and kind of look at my goals, understand my goals, and then kind of lay out a plan for me to attain those goals.
What is the most valuable thing your mentors or coaches has told you?
Oh, that's tough. I've been doing this a long time. They've told me lots of valuable things. Well, I'll tell you, one of the best and probably most foundational things, and this was from a mentor, not a coach. He was someone that I actually never met, but he owned the coaching business that my coach was a part of, and this is going back probably about 15 years. And he had this saying, and it was, cash ain't cash unless it's cash. And he was this guy from the Midwest of the U.S., kind of salt of the earth. And that point really struck with me, because we were in a business at the time that we did work and then we'd bill for the work. And so we had a lot of accounts receivable. And his point was, you can't count any of that as cash. And a lot of people in business make the mistake of counting things that aren't cash as cash. The reason that you want to keep that in mind is that if you ever run out of cash, you're out of business. Cash is like oxygen to a business. And so for me, I began taking up the practice of looking at what is our cash on a daily basis. And so every day I check if the bank will support it. So I've had banks in the past where they'll text you the balances and all the accounts every day. Going way back, I used to have them fax it to me. So no matter where I was, I knew what our cash situation was. And I see a lot of businesses not paying close enough attention to that. So I think that's really important.
What is the most valuable thing you have ever given away?
Probably time. I've given a lot of time. Certainly, we make monetary donations, but the value of those probably pale in comparison to the time and the expertise that I've volunteered over the years.
What is one thing that has contributed to your success?
I think for me, the fundamental thing is persistence. In fact, I have a quote here in my office directly behind where I'm sitting from Calvin Coolidge, who's the 30th president of the United States. And, and the essence of the quote is that it really doesn't matter how smart you are, how educated you are, how credentialed you are, that the only thing that matters in life is persistence, because there's always going to be obstacles. And if you quit when the obstacle is put in front of you, it doesn't matter how smart you are because the obstacle just won. It doesn't matter how talented you are because the obstacle just won. It doesn't matter what your credentials say you can do because the obstacle won. But if you persist through that, it doesn't really matter whether you're talented or intelligent or credentialed or anything else. If you're willing to persist, you will be successful.
What is one thing no one knows about you?
There aren't many left because I do a lot of these interviews and I've been asked that question before. But one thing that most people don't know about me is I was born in Alaska and I live at the other end of the United States in Florida.
What grounds you?
My wife mostly, and my children probably close behind that.
What are the biggest barriers that keep service businesses from growing?
I think this is not a popular answer, but it's, having observed a lot of businesses, I think it's an accurate answer. And the thing that limits their growth is the mindset of the owner. And I would count my own business within that. I think every business is limited by the level of thinking that the leader is at. And there's all of this talk over the last 10 or 15 years about mindset. And you can look at that in one of two ways. You can look at it and say, well, that's kind of a woo-woo thing. And it's, maybe doesn't have a whole lot of bearing on the harsh reality of business. But I would disagree, because the problems that you're faced with as a business owner generally require you to elevate the level of your thinking to be able to solve them. And so the better you are at doing that, the more problems you can solve and the faster the business grows. And to the extent that you cannot elevate that level of thinking, you're going to be stuck. And I think that's ultimately the game.
Tell us 4 ways to overcome the biggest challenges in growing or attracting clients when you are a service-based business.
Well, we talked about one of them. So the first and I think the most difficult one to get past is really choosing an ideal client. And I say it's difficult to get past because most business owners hesitate to do that. They are afraid that if they narrow their market or niche down, that they're going to give away opportunity or they're going to miss opportunity. And, and what I coach our clients is that we can theorize about a market that is so small that it won't support a business. But in practicality, I've never found one that's too small to support a business. So, narrow down until you actually have discovered one that's too small. So that's the first big barrier you got to get over. You've got to get specific about who you're trying to serve. And then once you've done that, you've got to get really, really clear on what you need to say to that group of people. And most of the time in business, if you go look at an average business website, it's going to talk about that business, not about the client that they're trying to reach. And so you've got to get inside the head of the person that you're trying to serve. And I think serve is the right word. You're there to serve them. And so to truly serve them, you've got to understand them, and you've got to understand how they think and how they need to be communicated with, so that you can help them transform whatever problem it is that you transform for them. And so I think that's the second big barrier, is now understanding, okay, what are the pains and problems that they have, and how do they think about them? What language do they use around them? And how can I craft my message to communicate clearly to them? And so to be able to get to that point, that's actually from what we've seen as we take clients through that process, that's a major hurdle and a major multiplier for the business. So once you get over that, and it's not that hard to get over, but sometimes it requires some outside help. Once you get over that, now business becomes a whole lot easier, because you're speaking to a specific group of people, and you're speaking to them in language that they recognize, and all of a sudden they're now attracted to you. And so things get much easier. And so I think those are the first two big ones to get past. The third is to look at how you're marketing your business and begin to build that into a repeatable system. And we see so many businesses that their marketing plan is basically relying on random acts of marketing. So either when they feel like it, or they get around to it, or they happen to think of it, they'll do some marketing, and they get they get results that reflect that, and they're usually not the kind of results that the business owner likes. And so you've got to get it into a system, and that's one of the things we do with our clients. We've got a framework that has three parts to it, and the central part of that, which is, I think, the most important marketing system in any business, is creating this ability to follow up forever with a prospect, and do it in a way that's leveraged and that's built around a media platform like a podcast. So you take this podcast where you're doing these interviews, and you send them out to your prospects, I hope, and probably email them out, among other ways of distributing it. And if you publish one of these weekly, for the group of people that you're trying to be a hero to, you're going to show up in their lives once a week, and they're going to be reminded that you exist, and that they like you, and that you're valuable, and that you have solutions to offer. And when they have a problem that needs one of those solutions, they now know who to come to. And so you're in this game for the long haul with that group of people. And that's the first thing you want to get systematized in this marketing system. Most people focus on the wrong thing. They focus on, I got to get leads and do all of that. But the problem is they're getting leads, and they're throwing them into a bucket that has no bottom. And so they're flowing right out of the bottom of the bucket, which makes for a very tiring way to run a business, because you always have to get new leads. When you have a system where you can always follow up, and it's based on a media platform where it's got this really interesting content that's being sent on a regular basis, where you're building a relationship with people, you're actually creating an asset within the business, so that if lead flow drops off a little bit, you've already got this pool of people. Maybe it's 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 50,000, who knows, because they can accumulate over time. You've got this pool of people that you're nurturing there that are ready to do business with you. And that's easier to do now than it ever has been in history. And so getting it systematized like that is the key. And then, kind of starting at that point of follow-up, and then adding on to that lead generation. We would argue that you want to start with referral marketing first, and then work your way up to paid media and to PR. And the reason for that is that with referrals, you have there's just so much forgiveness there of being a little bit off message. If you don't have that message perfectly dialed in just right, because you're being referred by someone that knows the person, whether that's one-on-one, or whether that's because you were interviewed on a podcast, and that host introduced you to their audience, or maybe you did a joint venture webinar, which is, big in internet marketing. Those are all forms of referral. Well, those forms of being introduced to a potential client or potential customer are far more forgiving if you're off message. Whereas paid media, you can lose a ton of money very quickly if your message isn't perfectly right, because people won't pay any attention to it. So anyway, so that's kind of the third piece, and then the final piece is not having a system to multiply your customers, not having a referral system. Once you get a client, having a way to multiply that client, and and if you can overcome those four things, and it's fairly simple to do that if you focus on it. But if you can overcome them, you can totally change the experience of building your business. It'll become much easier.
So, and then after that, you say that you should increase your fees as a service business.
There are three pricing strategies. Mm-hmm. Okay. You can use low price as a strategy, and you can use market price, sort of average price as a strategy, or you can use a premium price as a strategy. And I would argue that the only one that is actually a long-term winning strategy and has proven to be a long-term winning strategy over history is premium pricing. And let me explain why. So first, low pricing. If you look at the retail business, and if you look at the retail business in the United States in particular, beginning in the late 1800s, Sears Roebuck and Company was kind of the leader of the low price consumer goods, retail establishment. And they started off with an innovation where they had catalog shopping, back at a time where there weren't big, mega stores in every town. Across our country, there were, local little stores, but they didn't have a great variety. So here comes Sears, and they can mail a catalog out, and now you've got all the same variety of products all over the country. Big innovation. And they were able to sell them cheaper than anyone else. And that advantage lasted until about the 1980s. And then Walmart came along. Now they put a giant store in every town all over the country. And their advantage was they built this really great supply chain where they could get products cheaper than anyone else. Well, now we're 20 or 30 years later, or I guess almost 40 years later, and Amazon is taking them over as the low price leader with a new technological change. And that's the pattern of playing the low price game. Now, people in service businesses will relate to it this way. They all know someone who's willing to do a particular project for less than they are. And they kick the dirt and stomp the ground, and they get mad about it. And they say, well, how could he do that? Or how could she do that? And clearly they're not delivering a great service if they're doing that. That's what they say. And that doesn't change the fact that there's still someone, and always will be someone, willing to do it less to you. It's sort of a race to zero. So you can't win that. If you're in the middle, you're just like everyone else, and nothing is different about you, which means you're a commodity. So how do you win that? So the only game you can win is the premium price game, where you can use premium fees to create a premium experience that is unique and different from all of your competitors, and that is worth more to some segment of the market. And that's actually easier to win than you would think. And so that's why I believe everyone should raise prices. I think it's the only way to really build an enduring and successful business. And if you look around in the computer business, great example of that. Dell is a low price leader in computers, and they're completely commoditized, and that business is not worth very much. And on the other end of the spectrum is Apple. And Apple is an extreme premium price provider of computers. And they've just within the last 2 years have been the highest valued company in the world based on their trading value. So, there are other examples of this being the way to go. It's just that you got to have the courage to do it.
Let's talk about your business. Tell us more about your business.
Well, we work with professional service firms. We work with the owners of those firms, and we help them build out a marketing system so that they don't have to spend all of their time marketing. And then our team will help them run that system. And normally we will build it around a podcast, because a podcast is a media platform that's really very easy for an entrepreneur to operate. In other words, all you've got to do as a business owner is show up and talk. Our team handles all the rest of it. So you don't have to get into the technical stuff. You don't have to write anything. You don't have to do any of that. You just show up and talk, and we use it as a way to get you in front of the clients that you want to do business with, or the referral partners that can help you, and use the podcast as a way to build relationship with them.
So who will you take on? Do you just focus on professionals who are doing 5 to 7 figure, 10? What is your real clientele?
So our clients are generally, they've been in business for a little while. They're not necessarily just starting out. And so we can talk about some approaches for people who are just starting out, but mostly our clients are folks who've been in business for, 5 years or more, and are usually, in terms of dollars, they're usually doing anywhere from $300,000 a year in revenue up to, a few million.
And where can we find you? How can we connect with you?
Well, we've set up a page, Patience, just for your listeners. If they go to unstoppableceo.net/journey. That's unstoppableceo.net/journey. When they go there, we've got some resources for them if they want to learn more about our approach to things. There's a free copy of my book, The Exponential Network Strategy, that they can get, an ebook and audiobook. And we've got a complete guide to pre-selling your clients, so you don't have to, be a master salesperson, and they can get that for free. And there's also a place there if they'd like to book a call with me and learn more about what we do.
So, Clan, there will be more from Steve in a moment. If you are listening on one of the many podcasting platforms rather than my website, and you are encouraged by Steve's journey, go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for a bonus portion of the interview. The Online Success Journey is a wonderful membership community built for people searching for the path to success. We are one big clan and can be part of this community for free. Once you have joined the clan, click on part of Steve's journey or over 150 other journeys that are available, and learn how you can find the right path for your own online success journey. That's a wrap, clan. Remember, success is a journey. Patience and Steve.
This is not the end of the journey. We hope you've enjoyed listening to part 1 and want to be sure you know there is a second part to this and every journey podcast at onlinesuccessjourney.com, filled with even more success tips, uplifting stories, and even a bit of fun. There are dozens of episodes only available to the members of the Online Success Journey clan. Check out the website and click on Join the Clan for more information. Patience would like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and she has a free audio gift for you at her website. Go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for instant access to this gift. Of course, you know that listening to the journeys of others helps each of us chart our own path. So make sure you're subscribed to be notified as each new interview is posted. There are so many ways to stay connected to the Online Success Journey and to listen in. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we appreciate your help in telling others. One of the best ways to share the benefit you get is to rate and review it at Stitcher and other sites by clicking the stars or completing the ratings form, by clicking thumbs up and leaving a comment on YouTube, or liking and sharing the podcast on social media. To review the podcast within iTunes, simply open iTunes to the podcast, click on Ratings and Reviews, then write a review. On behalf of Patience, and until next time, thanks once more for listening. It is our hope that this podcast will guide you on your own online success journey.